yesterday at the Trinity Church.
Okay.
And we spoke there also.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, we so gallantly streaming in the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, sailed us that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free in the hope of the brave. Ich heilig Assad Anker vor Obrigaditas Jurvortika Art Kamchumen Assad Anker Hayastan Jurvortika Art Kamchumen Assad Anker Hayastan. Jechpajś, kies mi droż, worin dzieków gorczyci, kieszynera jest kunczego, arta sukowna wasi, kieszynera jest kunczego, arta sukowna wasi. Na iż darom jedy kujnow, na Irakan mit naszan, toch pochboli też na budem, toch mischt panza a jastan, toch pochboli też na budem, toch mischt panza a jastan.
Honored survivors, families of survivors, and families of those who perished, Reverend clergy, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the State House. I just have to say that looking out at all of you and at this sea of Armenian and American flags, this is a truly special, special moment. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Jonathan Hecht, State Representative for Watertown and Cambridge, and I will be Master of Ceremonies for the State House commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. To begin with, I just want to offer our thanks to Nune Karapetian, who just gave us that beautiful rendition of the national anthems of the United States and the Republic of Armenia. Thank you, Nune. For the last 7 years, it has been my great honor to help organize and lead the annual State House commemoration of the Armenian Genocide. I want to acknowledge the other current members of the legislature who have also been part of that effort, and to thank them for their dedication to ensuring that the Armenian Genocide is recognized and remembered. Senator Will Brownsberger of Belmont, Representative John Lawn of Watertown, Representative James Maselli of Wilmington, Representative David Moradian of Grafton, and Representative David Rogers of Cambridge. As many of you know, the annual State House commemoration is a tradition that goes back 30 years to Speaker George Kavarian. Normally, we hold the commemoration inside in the House chamber. It is a deeply moving event filled with prayer, music, and eloquent remembrance of the genocide committed against the Armenians in Turkey early in the last century. This year, as part of the statewide commemoration, we are here in the open air, before the world, to send a strong message. 100 years is far, far too long. It is long past time for the entire international community, including our own government in Washington, and especially the Turkish government in Ankara, to acknowledge the historical truth of the Armenian Genocide. Genocide is a crime against all humanity. It is the cause of all humanity to ensure that no genocide is ever denied or forgotten. We in Massachusetts are committed to this cause, to honoring and comforting the victims, survivors, and descendants of the Armenian Genocide, to upholding justice and the truth of those tragic events, and to preventing the recurrence of genocide anywhere in the world. I am proud to say that we have with us today the highest leaders of the Commonwealth to affirm this commitment. Our first speaker is Senator Harriet Chandler of Worcester. As Majority Leader of the Senate, Senator Chandler is the second highest ranking member of that body. Among her many accomplishments in the legislature, she has been a champion for social justice and for promoting the health of all our residents, especially children. I know she takes particular pride in representing the large, vibrant Armenian community in the Worcester region. Please join me in welcoming Senate Majority Leader Harriet Chandler.
Thank you, Representative Hecht, honored guests, members of the Armenian community, and dear friends. Today we remember the lives that were lost beginning 100 years ago today, April 24th, 1915. The anniversary of the Armenian Genocide is a day that marks a century of grief and longing for acknowledgement. However, it is a day that also brings renewed hope for resolution. Over the decades, the Armenian community has exemplified great resiliency and commitment to accountability for all that was lost 100 years ago. Looking around, we see how the Armenian community has truly flourished and prospered in Massachusetts. Massachusetts hosts the second largest Armenian community in the United States after California. I would also I would also like to note that the first Armenian church in the nation was established in Worcester, which I represent. I say it is time for the Turkish government to acknowledge that indeed it was a genocide. The government of 25 countries and 43 states in the United States recognize the events as a genocide. This week, the European Parliament and the Pope acknowledge the events as a genocide. Until it is recognized, the Armenian people, wherever they are in the world, will lack closure to the tragedy that happened 100 years ago. But for today, we celebrate the Armenian community and their enriching presence in the United States. Through this commemoration ceremony at the State House, we seek to honor those who have lost their lives and have been given sainthood, and also those who have found refuge here. We hope that this centennial marks a new beginning for the greater Armenian community across the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chandler. Our next speaker is the Speaker, the Leader of the House of Representatives, Robert DeLeo. Speaker DeLeo has been a member of the legislature since 1991 and was first elected Speaker in 2009. His many outstanding achievements as a member and Speaker of the House include landmark legislation on economic development, public safety, and expanding opportunity for persons with disabilities. Every year since he became Speaker, Speaker DeLeo has personally attended and addressed the State House Genocide Commemoration. No speaker since George Kavarian has been more supportive of this event and the cause of the Armenian people than Speaker DeLeo. Please join me in welcoming the Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo.
Thank you very much, Representative Hecht, for that very kind introduction. I'd also like to say, for those of you who during the national anthems of the United States and Armenia was saying how short that Speaker DeLeo is, I want to remind you I was standing between Baker and KOUTUJIAN. So I thank you for that placement. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us here today. Over the past few years, I've had the distinct honor to host this commemoration in the House chamber. As we mark the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide, I am heartened that because of the large turnout, we're gathering today in Ashburton Park. Look around you. Our State House has a storied history that I feel exemplifies democracy. Its legacy is particularly resonant today when, as we mark this solemn occasion, we also celebrate the Armenian community and the contributions that immigrants and their descendants have made to public life in our great state. I came to this issue through the traditions of the House of Representatives. As was just mentioned, one of my great predecessors, Speaker KOUTUJIAN, began this commemoration years ago. He had the courage to speak up at a time when many Americans did not know about the genocide. And by the way, I'd like to mention his grandniece is with us here today. Through leaders like Speaker KOUTUJIAN, I have learned more about the Armenian heritage and the Armenian Genocide. It's interesting to note that before my first year as Speaker, as we went to the commemoration, I did a couple of things. First of all, I tried to speak to Peter KOUTUJIAN to help me with the Armenian language. That did not work out very well. But secondly, I have a book, which I think the governor now has one, that someone had given me. It was a book by the Armenian author, Peter Balakian. It's called The Burning Tigris, which I'm sure many of you know about. And I still keep that book in my office. Through that book, I learned that there was a group of vocal Americans committed to raising awareness of the genocide, even as it was happening during World War I. That is our past. And as we look towards the future, I hope that events like this will encourage people all across this nation and world to fully and completely recognize these atrocities for what they were, a genocide. I believe that with this acknowledgement, our communities can begin a new phase of healing and reaffirm ourselves to the shared values that lift us up. While we remember those who perished, we must vow to carry on their legacy to ensure that the world never forgets. Following the event here today, there will be a procession to the Armenian Heritage Park on the Greenway. As we reflect today, I urge each of you to consider that symbolism of the Heritage Park and the gratitude we owe to the Armenian community, which is an exemplary pillar of American values. As humans, as Americans, we must ensure that human spirit outshines inhumanity. Today's commemoration will help us renew that commitment. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Our next speaker is His Excellency, Governor of the Commonwealth, Charlie Baker. Governor Baker has had a distinguished career in both the private and public sectors, with a focus on healthcare and human services. In his first 100 days in office, he has shown an admirable spirit of collaboration and willingness to tackle tough problems with fresh ideas and energy. Governor, we were touched by your remarks at last night's memorial service at Trinity Church. And we are deeply grateful for your presence here today. It means so much to all of us who care about the Armenian genocide to know that our governor stands with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Baker.
Thank you very much, Representative, and thank you all for being here today. And Mr. Speaker, let me just tell you that my good friend Bob Avakian also thought it would be helpful if I said a few things in Armenian until he heard me try. And then he said, "Governor, just stick to what you're good at." Where's Bob? He's around here somewhere. There he is. Thank you, Bob. Big help. Honored guests, friends, and I just want to add, the Attorney General, Maura Healey, the Auditor, Suzanne Bump, the Treasurer, Deborah Goldberg, thank you so much for being here as well. And the Governor's Counselor from Watertown, Marilyn Devaney. I thank you for inviting me here today to join you as we observe the centennial commemoration of the Armenian Genocide here at the State House. I want you to know, as your governor, I stand proudly with the Armenian American community on this issue. The Armenian American community is a wonderful force for good in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As Senator Chandler pointed out, this state is home to the oldest Armenian church in America, and outside of California, which is a little bigger than we are, we have the second largest Armenian community in the nation. And we will never forget, ever, that 100 years ago, over 1 million Armenians were killed by the Ottoman Empire. We will never forget. First, it was the intellectuals, the writers, doctors, lawyers, educators. Then the rest, including women and children. Our nation's efforts were noble and notable to help save those who survived the genocide at that time. But as I stand here and look out at some of the pictures around me, we should never forget those who were lost. It was mentioned that the Pope spoke to this earlier this week, in which he said, "Unless we stop the bleeding and bound the wound, it will continue to bleed." Pope Francis further called on world leaders to stand up against the denial of the Armenian Genocide. And as I rode home last night, I noticed that the Chancellor of Germany stood up and did just that yesterday. Well, good for him. Thanks, Dave. And today we have a chance to reaffirm our record on the Armenian Genocide, as Massachusetts and 42 other states have already done. I'm proud that our state continues to stand firm on this issue and educates our students about the history of the Armenian Genocide in public schools through the Facing History curriculum. And we are hopeful that through this learning and through educating future generations about these tragic events, we can do our part to ensure that they never happen again. Now, Bob, this is for you. God bless your Armenian saints. May we always remember them and stand by them for as long as it takes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor. Didn't she give a wonderful speech? I also want to add my thanks to the other constitutional officers who are here with us today, We really appreciate your presence. It means, again, so much to know that so many of our leading government officials in this state stand with all of us and with the Armenian community on this cause. Thank you. Several times we've heard mention today of George KOUTUJIAN, who was a great Armenian American and a great Speaker of the Massachusetts House. Through the years, the Massachusetts legislature has been enriched by other noted Armenian Americans, including my predecessor, Rachel Kaprilyan, Sheriff Peter KOUTUJIAN, and current State Representative James Maselli, whose grandmother was an Armenian Genocide survivor. This last January, we welcomed another outstanding Armenian American to our ranks. Representative David Moradian of Grafton has quickly made his mark as a skilled and collegial legislator, and he has become a key member of our team of Armenians by birth and Armenians by choice, who have the privilege to organize this annual commemoration. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Representative David Moradian.
Parav, my friends. Thank you for taking part in this State House commemoration. As my good friend and colleague said, my name is David Moradian, and I have the privilege of being the state representative of the towns of Grafton, Northbridge, and Upton, which has many Armenians, like myself and like most of you, in our communities. I do want to thank all the elected officials, the governor, Speaker, Senate Majority Leader, and the many distinguished guests who are here today standing strong to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. As the governor said 100 years ago in 1915, most Armenian doctors, educators, writers, intellectuals, lawyers, and community leaders were rounded up and viciously killed, or forced into death marches leading into the Syrian desert. This massacre left 1.5 million Armenians dead. Genocide across the world has had a profound effect, and that rings true right here in the Massachusetts legislature. We have had our share of Armenian members, as we just referenced the late Speaker George KOUTUJIAN, the Registrar, and the High Sheriff, who I believe is speaking next. In fact, in just this past election cycle, my friend and colleague Ratty Mom, who himself has survived the Cambodian genocide, was elected, making him the first Cambodian representative elected in the House of Representatives. As my friend the governor pointed out, in the United States, the first Cambodian. We come here today to honor the martyrs who went before us and who had their lives taken from them. There is no doubt that this was a horrific incident encased in a horrid part of history. Throughout my schooling, when I was younger, I would insist on covering the Armenian Genocide for any projects or presentations. I grew up on stories of the old country from my great-uncle Nick, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but it's because of him that I have taken such a great pride in my heritage. My Uncle Nick was a survivor of the genocide and left a lasting impression on me through one specific story. During the genocide, he watched Ottoman government members kill his father in front of him for the slippers on his feet. I sit here to this day and am astonished that any individual can say that this was not a systematic attempt to destroy our people. However, I am proud to say that Massachusetts recognizes the commencement of this genocide every year, and none more fitting than this, the 100th anniversary. We have even seen Pope Francis come out and call on world leaders to stand up against the denial of the Armenian Genocide. Even some of our own United States presidents, past and present, come short in using the word genocide. It's an absolute disgrace that maintaining relations is more important than honoring our history. Mr. President, I implore you, end the denial and officially declare it a genocide once and for all. This is not a partisan issue. I stand here with an R next to my name and some of my best friends with a D next to theirs. But we should all stand united in having an A for Armenian next to all of our names. We must recognize the happenings of 100 years ago. Our wounds have started to heal, but we all have scars that remain. The healing process truly begins when all involved take responsibility for their role. We will never be able to change what happened, but we can all help with continuing to educate so that this history never repeats itself. I must tell you why my great-uncle Nick's father refused to give up his slippers. And it was from all of his hard work that allowed him to buy them. It was because he was too proud to give them up. And that's what we are. We are too proud to let the atrocity that happened 100 years ago define us. We'll continue to teach individuals of our history and show our pride in our heritage. We must take time to reflect and remember all of our family and friends whose lives were taken away from them. But we also must take time and appreciate how just 100 years ago, our heritage was almost wiped out, yet we are here today, and we have proudly become those doctors, those educators, those writers, those intellectuals, those community leaders. I am proud to be a state representative. I am proud to be an Armenian American, and I am certainly proud to walk arm in arm with each and every one of you down to our Heritage Park. Thank you and God bless. Round two. It is my distinguished honor to introduce a very good friend of mine, the High Sheriff of Middlesex County, Peter KOUTUJIAN.
I am so proud to stand with my brothers and sisters and our children and our parents and our grandparents and those that we remember today. And when we walked out into this park, I have never been more moved to be at an Armenian event in my life, to see the sea of people, the sea of Armenian flags before this auspicious building. This is an amazing day for our people, is it not? I just returned from Washington, D.C. just last night, where I was participated in the Congressional Armenian Commemoration, where we called all the members of Congress and the United States Senate to come down and speak about our genocide. And there were hundreds of our people there, and there were dozens of senators and congressmen that took time to be there, despite they were rushing out for flights, despite they were rushing out for other appointments, to be there to stand and speak with our community, one after the other after the other. And it made me so proud to know the clout, the power, the influence, and the belief that we have in Washington, D.C., across this nation. And when you think it can't can't get much better than after the Pope announces and commemorates our genocide. And finally, was that not gratifying? Did it not make you say, finally someone has spoken on our behalf, didn't it? But then we hear of one other sign from just yesterday. A man who has brought us so much into this area. A man that has brought us 4 Super Bowls already, Bill Belichick. Do you all know what he did? At the White House reception for the New England Patriots, the Super Bowl champions, Bill Belichick not only wore a suit, he wore an Armenian flag pin right on his lapel, right in front of President Obama. May not be the Pope, folks, but that's pretty darn good, isn't it? And we'll have to find out which of our friends, which one got to him too on that, because this goes to show you the power that we have when we speak to our friends and build our relationships. This is an auspicious building. We are here before this auspicious big building. The oldest constitution continually in use in the entire world right now started right here in Massachusetts. A place where the legislature, these great men and women behind us and their predecessors, our predecessors, pushed for the teaching of Armenian genocide in our public curriculum in our schools, right? You remember that one? This legislature pushed for the recognition for the independence of Karabakh and the recognition of Karabakh. Remember that one? This legislature recognized the Armenian Genocide many years ago. Do you remember that one? And this legislature started with our good friend, Speaker George Kavarian, Nairi's grand uncle. George Kavarian started this Armenian commemoration that started decades ago and has continued on. It has been led by Speaker Kavarian, by our Registrar of Motor Vehicles, now working for the federal government, Rachel Kaprillian, by myself. But we always have to remember our non-Armenian friends, the Tolman brothers that led this for many years. Remember that? And by the way, I sort of do miss doing that in the morning where Stephen Tolman would always come up and say, Pari Louise. So, Mr. Speaker, trust me, it's better you don't try that stuff. It was kind of painful, but it was always really fun, and we always loved Stephen Tolman and his brother Warren for leading us. And our great friend John Hecht, who has also led this for so many years. On another hand for John Hecht, that has been a great leader. Speaking of other great Senate leaders, we've got a couple that have joined us here. Senator Lewis from Winchester. Senator Jason Lewis is right here. Thank you for being here with us. Senator Michael Barrett also is here. So thank you, Senator Michael Barrett, many of our constituents. And we've now moved on. And, Representative McGonigal from Everett is here, I understand. So there you go, Joe. Great to see you, sir. Former hometown of George Kavarian. Thank you, Joe, for being here. And of course, now we've got a great friend. We now have an Armenian, an IAN, that's going to be back in the back of that rostrum, David Muradian. So we're so proud to have David there as well. Just a couple of notes about our governor. Thank you so much for being here, Governor. Thank you for speaking so informedly, so plainly, so openly. And people here should understand that it never was a hesitation for a moment for the governor to join us in our message. He knew it before he became governor. He never had to be convinced. This was an easy choice for him, and thank you very much, Governor Baker, for your leadership. Never a hesitation on this. And of course, our great speaker, DELEO, who has been here every single year and prepares something meaningful and different each year. Thank you so much. And we've got almost every constitutional officer here, along with other leaders, Treasurer Goldberg, Auditor Bump, Attorney General Healy, all here along with our governor and our Speaker of the House. This is a great day. Let's think about why we're here, though. April 24th, 100 years ago, after decades of slaughters, when many of our people came to this great country to flee the slaughters before the genocide. When we suddenly thought we had hope because the Young Turks came to us and said, we would like to have you join us in government. We will create a constitution. We will give you constitutional rights. And then we were betrayed. On April 24th, hundreds of our leaders were slaughtered. Our political leaders, our educators, our intellectual leaders were taken and summarily slaughtered From that point, they took our able-bodied men, most of them in their military, and took them down. And then thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children were led into the desert to be slaughtered summarily, to be led to their death, dehydration and starvation, sometimes making it to concentration camps in Syria, and then being led further into the desert from that point, just for the systematic purpose of destroying an entire people. By the way, we should understand that genocide cannot be committed by a group. It has to be committed by a government, doesn't it? They're the only people in charge enough to commit genocide is a government. We can tell the stories, we all have them. My grandparents, Abraham and Zadohi, who lived in Madash, that left Madash with nothing but the clothes on their backs, becoming separated on their way. Not much different from so many of the stories of your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your aunts and uncles, so many loved ones here that left Madash with nothing but the clothes on their back. And finally, I won't tell you about the journey, but it was much as yours were. They saw death and devastation on their way. They suffered greatly. They saw their neighbors and their friends and their loved ones dead on the sides of the roads. But let me tell you something, as they came to this great country and became the greatest patriots by raising 4 great children, including my father, and who just passed this year, another survivor gone, by the way. Thank you so much for by the way, your prayers and thoughts for my dad, who was a great leader for our community for so many years as well. This is my first year without my dad for the genocide, and it's a difficult year for me. But they made it to this country and they survived. Well, let me just say something here to Turkey. You failed, we survived, didn't we? And as we are about to begin our procession down to Armenian Heritage Park, this will be a solemn procession. We will be thinking about the very marches that many of our relatives went through, many of our people went through. We'll be thinking of their loss, of what they must have been thinking as they proceeded, not knowing where they were going. We know that they will think of the tunnel that was dark, but for us there is a light at the end of that tunnel, and it will be led by our honor guard. And that light at the end of the tunnel is probably our greatest civic achievement here in Greater Boston area, Armenian Heritage Park, right? And that was a project that started in the dark and we fought for many years. It started with Rachel and I filing an amendment back in 1999 and fighting and fighting and fighting. And despite great opposition by many, so many, we all know who they were, we, through our unanimity, through 13 churches and 25 organizations, all deciding unanimously on a design and how to proceed with the leadership of the Knights of WALTHEM and Jim KOUTUJIAN, we made that happen. One of the best days we've had in Greater Boston was that day. So after many dark days, that happened. Let me just close by saying one thing. The genocide happened to us, but we are not defined by the genocide, are we? We are strong, we are survivors, we're persevering, we have succeeded. Turkey has failed, we are here, we have defeated them. So we must understand that while we commemorate our loss, while we think of our genocide, something we must do, we must always never be victims of that genocide. We have overcome that genocide. We have succeeded in spite of their acts. And as we go on, I say, in sort of paraphrasing Ronald Reagan, Mr. President, recognize this genocide. We need to recognize this genocide, and we need to do this for the world, not just for us as diasporan Armenians. We need to do this for the world. We need to do this for Turkey, right? Because if Turkey recognizes this genocide, then we can all move on. This is a wound that is festering under a bandage, and no one wants to take that bandage off. We are all afraid to take that bandage off because of what we might find. And we'll all pretend it's healing underneath there, and it's never going to heal until we take that bandage off. And we know that many times you just have to rip that bandage off as quickly as possible, to open that up, to let it heal, to let the sun shine in, to begin that healing process and make us all better and stronger. Thank you so much for being here. God bless Armenia. God bless the United States of America. Recognize this genocide. The march will begin, I'm being told, this way. Is that correct, Commissioner?